the House of Reps raising serious concerns about MOWAA. Not to talk about all of the drama that has happened and what we heard the Oba of Benin say. What more do you know about how this museum is currently managed? Because that has been a key conversation. Who makes key decisions? What mechanisms exist to ensure accountability?
Well, the whole MOWAA issue has been one that has saddened me, to be quite honest with you, because I think it could have been handled better by the incumbent governor of Edo State because of the potential that MOWAA brings to Edo State, and particularly Benin. I mean, I was on your station a couple of months ago reeling out what this means, having lived in Benin myself for about 5 years when I schooled in Edo State. And I can tell you for free that, you know, the transformative impact of what MOWAA would have been or could still be, you know, in Benin State is limitless. And so to have it all, you know, trapped in all of these investigations, you know, there are hearings not just at the Federal House of Representatives, there are hearings at the Edo State House of Assembly. There are all sorts of, you know, committees set up to investigate what for me has been an entirely transparent process. You know, from the way that they have raised their funding to the collaborations that they have, you know, built together up until this very point, to the global institutions that have also lent their support to this institute, it's been 100% transparent. And I found it very worrying that, you know, rather than focus on the potential that this brings for Benin, you know, people, and of course Edo State generally, especially I'm talking about its economic benefit, we seem to be grappling with the politics of the matter.
But that is one way. That is one way to look at it, because I also lived and worked in Benin for maybe not up to 5 years, but about 4 years thereabout. And there were
that makes both of us.
Yes, there have been conversations about I think it was initially Benin Heritage Museum.
Yes.
And these are conversations that have existed between the state and the palace.
Yes.
Long before Obaseki.
Yes.
Now, you can't take away the politics, because Obaseki, there's also controversies about how he went about that deal, talking with who he called the crown prince. We heard the Oba say the guy is not even a crown prince until some rituals take place and they take him to Uselu. So how do you bring MOWAA without adequately getting stakeholders like the state government, especially the current government in power, and the palace on the table to have that conversation? We saw I think it was the German ambassador and a few other stakeholders that met with Governor Okwewole recently. There are conversations as to the worry that these lawmakers are raising is about foreign investment and how that might influence the operations and priorities of this museum, because it's the heritage of the people they're talking about.
Yes. Well, I mean, you've touched on a few things, so let me just run through them because of time. Firstly, you talked about the influence, the foreign influence on. I mean, to be honest with you, rather than the potential that it brings to Benin, I just don't see what the foreign influence is, because what MOWAA is going to do for Benin City is to make it, you know, a cultural destination, you know, for global cultural tourism, right? And if you're talking about what white people are going to do in Benin City other than tourism, I just don't see what the hula baloo is all about. Because if you take, for instance, the soft opening that they tried to do sometime last week, you know, Sunday, if I remember correctly, the entire Protea Hotel was filled up with several other hotels in Benin City, because you had artists who had traveled from across the world to come to witness its opening. You had diplomats, you had, you know, people from across the world. And that meant business for hoteliers in Benin City. That meant business for restaurants. And also that meant business, you know, for small artisans in the city. And that is exactly the potential that it brings. So rather than focusing on what does not exist, which is some sort of second imperialism that people are sort of touting, I believe that this brings potential economic opportunities for people in those states. Remember that Edo people are known for their craftsmanship, and you have a lot of talented artists in Edo State, people who, arts and culture and all of those things that, you know, the creative enterprise in Benin is unbelievable. But for once in a very long time, they now have the opportunity to go global. And this is what this institute provides, the kinds of collaboration that they never had before now, the kind of funding opportunities that they never had before now, the kind of capacity building opportunities that they never had before now. And these are things that the state government cannot do on its own.
I hear you.
Right? So I just, really and truly, I think there is so much emphasis on the politics of the issue. And you know, politicians can fall out every time.
But I'm trying to say there's also some relevance in the politics of things, because there's the big question of who is the true cultural custodian of this repatriated artifacts.
Fantastic.
How much money did they get?
Yes.
Who got the money and how's it been spent? I mean, how's it been spent? Are you saying that because of the potentials that MOWAA brings, that you just look elsewhere and not talk about that again?
So I think it's very important, this question that you raised, and it needs clarification. MOWAA does not hold a single of the artifacts. It doesn't hold a single of any of, you know, the Benin bronzes that were returned back to Edo State. It doesn't house any of them.
It won't feature in the museum at all.
As we speak today, it doesn't house any of them, right? What it currently has in display are contemporary arts, and of course, many of, you know, across West Africa.
So what links MOWAA with these artifacts?
So that's what we're saying, that as we speak today, it doesn't house any of these artifacts. So the propaganda that is going to steal the artifacts or collect what was supposed to be meant for the Edo people, it's just cheap propaganda and blackmail. It doesn't house any of these things. Like I said, there was a soft opening and people could see for themselves that it was filled with contemporary art. And, you know, and that's why it's important to stop peddling this misinformation, because it doesn't house any of these things, even though it has the infrastructure upon which it can house many of these artifacts in the way that they were housed when they were in the UK or in France or in Germany. It has that capacity to be able to do that and to preserve it for a long period of time. And of course, I believe they'll be happy, you know, to house it if given to them by the Oba of Benin. But the truth is, it doesn't do that at the moment.
You know, certain questions must be answered. There's a review that the Edo State government is calling for. They say that they need to take back 50% of the land that has been approved because it has encroached into a critical hospital infrastructure in Edo State. I spoke with the spokesperson of the governor just last week, who mentioned that it could not even expand as little as a septic tank in the hospital because of how much land the former governor gave to MOWAA. There is how are these stakeholders willing to bring to the table the Benin Palace, which I believe is a critical stakeholder in this? Are you saying that these things are not possible to achieve within the time frame, and we see MOWAA established and move on with all the fine attributes that you've spoken about?
I manage reputations for a living, and believe me, I want to see a situation where the palace must be carried along. I mean, I believe that one of the greatest, you know, letdowns will be how perhaps, you know, the palace relationships with the previous administration broke down. I think that there could have been better management of that relationship, especially with the previous administration. You cannot, you know, have something that, you know, tends to speak to the heritage of the Benin people and not carry along the custodians, you know, of that culture and that heritage. And that squarely rests on, you know, how the relationship went between the previous administration and perhaps the palace. And to be honest and to be fair to the trust that manages MOWAA, they really and truly are not part of that mix. They are doing their jobs and have tried to extend, and I believe or should expect that they are doing their work to extend certain kinds of relationship to the palace. But having said that, and while we emphasize on the importance of that relationship, I think it's also important to stress on the importance and the impact of that particular museum, and so that it's not shrouded in the politics of the matter. I mean, they can go ahead with all the investigations they want to do. I think it's important to always look at the books and see where, if monies were, you know, you can do all of that. There's no problem with that. But let's not lose sight about the fact that you have in your city what can create at least 25,000 jobs. You have in your city what can create opportunities for artists, for craftsmen, who can put their products on the global market. And they can attract funding and capacity building. You have in your city what can bring hundreds of thousands of tourists from across the world to fill your hotels, to fill your restaurants, to fill your bars, and extract income tax for the state government. I think that's the big picture that the Edo State government and the governor should be looking at. And if I were him, trust me, I'll be soaking up all the energy in the room, taking all the shine from the previous administration and make this project my own baby, because it has a transformational effect, you know, for not just the economy of Edo State, but for the young people. Edo State is full with predominantly young people, and the opportunities that I present for them, you know, you can't just exhaust it. And I think he should be leading, you know, from the front.
That's our time. Public communications expert Ayodele Adio, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.